Welcome to the ZMS Esports Studio. Tonight, we're live and we're broadcasting across Facebook and YouTube. So welcome to tonight's broadcast. It's an exciting one. We're on to the final stage of Flamme Rouge Racing Tour Britannia. It's stage 8. We're in Yorkshire and we're going to take a look at today's stage in a little bit more detail shortly. But first, I want to get a quick overview of what our riders and teams have been racing over the last 7 stages. First of all, tonight's stage, we are in Yorkshire, and it's the Pump Room 8 course, 55 kilometres, and this takes in every road in Yorkshire. 4 segments in total for this one. I did a recent YouTube video on this whole Flamme Rouge Tour, and I can tell you, I think this is a bit of a rite of passage in terms of Zwift racers and esports riders. These events are absolutely epic. They're a true challenge. So if you want to take the next step in terms of Zwift racing, then look no further than the Flamme Rouge Racing Tour. Okay, so the Tour of Britannia, as I said, this is stage 8. It's 8 stages spanning 9 days. We started in New York for the Grand Depart and a very punchy, exciting course which covered 48 kilometres. The next day, our riders took to the streets and hills of London for another lumpy day, covering a massive 67 kilometres. The tour also included this time 2 individual time trials. But let's have a look at today's stage. This stage, as said, is in Yorkshire, 55 kilometres, 1,000 metres of elevation. We've got 4 segments per lap here. It's important to note that the Flamme Rouge Racing is many jerseys that you could be racing for. First of all, we've got the general classification, the GC, the fastest time over all stages in this tour. We're on approximately 8 hours of racing for the A riders at this stage. And again, many more hours or an hour and a half to come. But some of the lower categories, there's 9 categories in total, will be racing for many more hours. So it is a true challenge. All right, let's take a look at some of the segments in tonight's stage, because as I said, it's not just the GC, but of course we've got a climber's jersey to play for across all categories, and also there's the points for sprint. Now, it's important to note both of these jerseys that the riders are racing for are the fastest through segments, and there's been many segments through this tour. So again, we're starting off with a sprint segment, and it's the sprint segment reverse. This one, 400 meters long. This is the one. Again, all these sprints are not completely flat. Although it's got a 0% gradient in here, it does pitch up before we take that turn, and then you can see that banner ahead for this first sprint. So again, this comes very early in the race at 2.3 kilometers, then again at almost the 30 kilometer mark. We then move on to the first KOM of the day. This is the Yorkshire Com, 1.2 kilometers. 5.5% average gradient with this one. We know this one where it doglegs right over the roundabout. You see the banner way off in the distance, and it just seems to go on forever before you take that left turn, and you get a little bit of recovery as we head back into town. We're going to hit the second sprint of the day. It's actually the same sprint, but in reverse this one. And again, you're dragging up before you even get to the sprint this time. So we've got that draggy section up to the climb. It's a shorter punch, this one, at 250 meters. But again, you take that right-hand turn, immediately hit the sprint, and then you sort of S-bend through there until that finishing banner for that finishing sprint. We're then going to move on to that final KOM, which again is that same Yorkshire Com reverse this time. Again, it's 1.2 kilometers, 4% average gradient, this one. Again, it's very, very tough. It isn't just about the segments on this course, because as we know, there are other sections on this course which make it tough going. We've got Oak Vet Climb. We then have the infamous Pot Bank Climb. And I think that's going to be the place on the course that makes the difference on this particular race. Yes, there are jerseys and points to be chasing for those fastest through segments. But ultimately, there's some riders in the pen tonight who I know are going to be chasing for that overall GC. Ed Laverick is one of those riders that we're going to be looking out for in the pen. Multiple races every day that the stage has been running. Today, we've already had 4 times this stage has been run. But the top riders, they save themselves for this the final time on stage 8. And that's when they can have a look at the time set here further in the day or earlier in the day and then chase that time to top that league table. So not forgetting Pot Bank Climb, that's going to come in the final 5 kilometers of the race. That's preceded by Oak Beck. So again, those are the 2 sections on that final lap that if riders are going to break and go for GC and extend that time, that is the place to do it. Now, the Flamme Rouge Racing works on overall, general, sprint and banners. Let's have a look at the categories of riders in a bit more detail. So this is the way Flamme Rouge Racing like to categorize their races and their riders in terms of chilies. So indeed, we've got the capsaicin chili top in there. So that is our true elites. They can push 4.7 watts a kilo for 20 minutes. Then we've got the dragon category, 4.3 to 4.7. The Reapers, they're coming in 4 to 4.3. Then we get on to the ghost chilies there. Again, what you're going to see in race is those riders will have in brackets that FRHC code in brackets after their name. We then get onto the habanero. I'm probably going to mess some of these names up. 3.4 to 3.7. The Bonnet chili, 3.1 to 3.4 watts per kilo. The cayenne, 2.8 to 3.1. The jalapeno, hope I said that correctly, 2.5 to 2.8 watts per kilo. And I'm no way. I mean, all I see is pepperoni for that final chili there. 2.5 watts per kilo below. And then you also can see the watts per kilogram there for the female riders on the right-hand side. Just 6 categories there for those female riders. So the riders are currently in the pen. There's a few riders that we're going to be looking for. I've already mentioned Ed Laverick is in the pen tonight. He's going to be racing and chasing that time. Something else we're going to see tonight, very unique, is we've got some of our riders in our Discord channel. So we're going to be looking at some of those pain caves, some of those pain faces, maybe as we get into some of those segments as well, whether that be on those longer climbs or maybe on that pitchy bank climb that we're going to be getting to. So yes, we are in Yorkshire. I have had my Yorkshire tea to keep me warm in the very cold studio this evening. We're just a few minutes away from being in the pen. We're predominantly going to sit with the A riders tonight, and that's 3 categories who are racing there. And then we will, if we get a chance at the end, take a look at some of the other categories racing this evening. But as I've said, the main focus tonight is going to be on these GC contenders. Rinus Verhaale is also in the pen, I believe, this evening. He's currently sat 3rd on GC, or at least he was sitting 3rd when we were end of stage 7. So he's going to be in there. We've also got a few other riders to watch out for. Once we get into the pens, once we get on course, I'll absolutely shout out some of those top 10 riders that are going to be chasing that GC time. Not forgetting those riders who are sitting at the top of the climber categorization. And I can tell you, the climbers in today's pen, they would have seen the time set earlier today in those earlier races that we've seen. It's the same for sprinters. So we're left the pens. We are on course. Let's dive straight in and take a look at this action, because it's not going to be long until we hit this first sprint of the day. So it's worth pointing out here that it's not just an individual race here. We do have team categorization in play. So some of the teams that you're going to see, Coalition are in here. Team Level Racing are in here. I've seen a few Saris jerseys already pushing the front. And in fact, there's a dirt jersey on the front here as well. Primor Racing Without Borders also represented here. Obviously, these guys also ever present in the Zwift Grand Prix, which is currently running. We've got all riders. I think we've got about 30 to 40 riders sat with us in the pen at the moment, or on the road, should I say. Looking out for Ed Laverick. Rides, of course, for the back pedal team. Team Draft are present here as well. We've got Team Dirt. 2 guys also here. Alpha Racing. We've got Atkins also on the left-hand side there, riding for the US. He's also in a dirt jersey. We're out on course, and we're heading towards this first section. We see Hamilton just leading us out here on this first section. And we head towards this first sprint of the day, which is going to come at kilometre 2.2. And again, there will be riders here chasing for time on this segment. The road pitches up, as I said, before we get to this sprint. We do pitch up a little bit. It's a constantly rolling course, this one. So this broadcast is brought to you today by ZMS Esports Studios. I apologise for my voice. I'm suffering with a little bit of the winter flu currently, but also in association today with the Virtual Vela Network and myself, SiBradeley, and my YouTube channel. So we see some of the riders just pushing the pace on here. So we've got riders represented from Alpha, Team Dirt, Racing Without Borders, OTR Racing, Coalition, Backpedal. No Pins are in here as well. Two guys, as I've said, Sisu Racing also present. Rue Riders and TBR Racing also present in this group. We need to have a look who's pushing the front of the pace here. And I can see a Welsh flag at the pointy end of the race there, so I'm assuming Ed Laverick is pushing this pace, and indeed it is. One of our top-ranked racing, certainly sitting in the top 3. In fact, I think he was sitting second overall, Stage 7. We're approaching this first sprint of the day. You can see riders upping the pace. Ed not particularly interested in contesting this sprint here, but you can see already having to push 400 watts. You can see the sprint banner coming there. We've got about 7 riders pushing the pace. It is one of the dirt riders timing it to perfection there. Remember, this is fastest through segment. This is the Yorkshire Sprint Reverse. 400 metres this one. A little bit blind as you take that left turn. But again, those riders really pushing the pace. Very shortly, we'll get the results of that first sprint through. I think these riders are going to ease back now. And again, these riders got to be really cautious today, because earlier races, we saw about 1 hour 20 for this course. 1 hour 20 around a course which is 55 kilometres and just shy of 1,000 metres of elevation, this one. But I do expect with the nature of this course, we are going to see some separation pretty early on this one. Thank you for joining us, whether you're on Facebook or you're joining us over on YouTube. Don't be afraid to join in the chat and join in the conversation. I am going to be keeping an eye on some of the YouTube chat this evening, so I can see we've got Lisa in there. Crazy Pants, we've got Gina. Thanks for joining the chat. Thanks for joining the stream. We're also over on Facebook. I do apologise to our Facebook viewers because I cannot see the chat over on Facebook. But we'll drop back down into town here, and it won't be long here before we start to climb out of Harrogate itself and head into the countryside. And that's when we're going to start to head towards the first KOM of the day. The KOM Yorkshire Climb. This is going to come at kilometre 12. So you see we are 4 kilometres into the race here of this 55.2 kilometre race, just 5 minutes in. Fairly steady and together at this stage, although we do just have 3 riders off the front here pushing the pace. And again, as I've said earlier, it is important that these guys do push the pace. They have that 1 hour 20 mark, and I can tell you, the top 3 riders at the end of stage 7, there was no less than a minute between those riders, just over a minute between those 3 riders. In fact, I think between first and second, we were looking at 42 seconds. So we've just gone past the pens where they saw it on the right-hand side here. This is going to be the start-finish banner that we're just rolling through with the end of the day, but we will take this in the opposite direction on that final lap. So this is a figure 8 course. We're, of course, on the Royal Pump Room 8. This is the course which takes in every road in Yorkshire on the Zwift Yorkshire map, of course, which was used for the UCI World Championships. And again, it is our dirt rider just hanging off the front there, pushing the pace, trying to encourage some riders just to continue, roll through and keep this pace high, because they are, remember, chasing this 1 hour 20 minutes. I can see we've also got John Poole in the chat. John Poole, one of the dirt riders there, so no doubt giving a bit of support to some of the other dirt riders which are in this group. And we're looking at one of the dirt riders on the front and one of the dirt riders just in the group there as well with Dame. I'm probably going to mess a lot of these names up, so I do apologise. Indeed, I was right, though. This is one of the dirt riders just out on the front. One of the British dirt riders there. Pushing the pace, hanging out in front. Really needs a few additional riders with him here. But again, the riders to watch today, we're looking at Ed Laverick. We're looking at Rinus Verhaelen, if he is in there, although I think Rinus may have raced earlier today. He was he was sitting third on GC after stage 7. Rinus rides actually for one of the teams that we sponsor at Level Velo Clothing. He rides for Avis Synergy, which again are present in the Zwift Grand Prix that's going on at the moment. In fact, the ladies just raced around the Mercury course, didn't they, on Thursday? And we're going to be on that with the Zwift Racing League on Tuesday. The men, I think they're up on Thursday. They are going to be racing the Scotland course, which is Muckley this time as well. And again, the Zwift Racing League will follow the following Tuesday, and we'll race that in the ZRL. One of the other riders that we're going to be watching out for, hopefully we're going to see him shortly in this pen, is Adrian, one of the French fusion riders. Again, ever present. He is sitting currently first on GC. In fact, by just 4 seconds. Just 4 seconds separating those top two riders. The total time so far for Adrian, who was sat first, 7 hours, 54 minutes. So we're going to be looking at close on 9.5 hours of racing here. So we can see our leader has been joined by some support. So we have 2 riders out in front here. We're just 6 kilometers in. We've got this long drag up here before we take the right-hand turn. And then we're going to hit Pot Bank, but in the opposite direction. So it's a good opportunity to take a look at this course and this climb in the opposite direction first of all. But of course, once we drop back into Harrogate, loop round the smaller part of that figure 8, we will be coming straight back in the opposite direction, up that Yorkshire KOM, over Oakbeck, and then the infamous Pot Bank climb, which of course we also raced recently when we did the tour of Chewitwell in the Zwift Racing League. Thank you for your kind messages over on YouTube. I do apologise again. I am working hard with the Lemsip and Strepsils, trying to clear this throat. This is a very important stage, the final stage of the Flamme Rouge racing. We are going to try and bring you some results as quickly as we can after tonight's race. But again, if you want to take a look at the updates or where we are in terms of GC following stage 7, then we can do that. I can tell you some of the rides or what GC is looking like after some of the riders today. Currently on GC with the riders that have completed stage 8, we've got Bart van der Linden there, 9 hours 40 minutes. So well done, Bart. That's your Flamme Rouge Racing Tour Britannia done. Completed all 8 stages. Adrian, in fact, Adrian has already raced today. 9 hours, 14 minutes, 42. So Ed Laverick knows what times he's got to chase. Rinus Verhaelen currently sat third, 9 hours, 12 minutes there. Let's take a look at some of the climbing polka dot leagues that we've got currently. And it is Adrian, again, one of our GC contenders, who's sat at the top of that polka dot jersey lead at the moment. Rinus Verhaelen sitting second. Philippe van Leeuwen sitting third. Kjell Otterly from Generation X sat fourth. And Kieran Moe. Verhaelen is sat fifth. Let's take a look at some of the sprints as well. We'll take a look at some of the green jersey leaders. And it is Adrian again. So Adrian is not only leading the GC at this point, but he is leading the sprint competition and the polka dot competition. Is that going to be the same after this race, the final race of the Flamme Rouge Racing Tour? Kjell Otterwell is sitting second in the green jersey competition currently with 377 points. Adrian had 423, by the way. John Teffler chasing 373 points. Kieran Moe there, Verhaelen. Again, he's sat fourth currently on 371 points. And fifth, Philippe van Leeuwen sitting fifth place, 363 points. And again, what you see, particularly on the KOMs there, the harder the climb, the more points are available. Now, of course, we did have the King Stage in London yesterday, where they took on, of course, Leith Hill. And that was 12 100 meters of elevation in yesterday's stage. They took on Fox Hill, Leith Hill, and Keith Hill, multiple occasions on that course there. So no doubt, after 7 stages already, the legs are going to be tired. Fatigue is going to set in. Yesterday, last night, this morning would have been about recovery, resting as much as possible. We had a good excuse to rest here in the UK today because we've had plenty of snow, or at least I have in the north. So it was all about warm tea and chocolate biscuits in front of the fire, preparing for today's race. So again, it looks like we're all back to parity at the moment with these riders. We're currently sat with CK, one of the habaneros there from Team Dirt. That was the B race. So we're looking at both races here, which is fantastic. A race on the left-hand side, the B race on the right-hand side. We're going to try and cover as much as we can today. And we'll try and keep as much as we can over the categories. Looks like in the B race, we're all together. Look at that, 108 riders in this pen this evening, starting this race. Of course, spread over multiple categories there. 3 categories would have started out, or 3 Flamme Rouge racing categories would have started out in this. And again, in the B category, multiple teams represented. Dirt ever present, Coalition ever present, Racing Without Borders. I know some of my own team members from Level Racing raced earlier today. But again, it's good to see so many national flags in here as well. I'm seeing German, Belgium, Swedish flag, Norwegian flags, US flags. I'm going to mess some of these flags up for sure. I'm going to have to do a Dave Towell, I think, and study some of these flags. Great to have Chris Fenker and Holly. Holly, a Yorkshire girl herself, Holly Bergen, World Team Time Trial, or World Team Time Trial champion, I think. Or Guinness World Record, should I say. We're back to the A race. And then we have these 2 riders pushing the pace on. These are the results from the sprint. Josh Harris, BL13 there, representing BL13, topping that leaderboard. Carl Frechette, sitting second. Tim Christoph Stank, I want to say, in third. Ronald Down, that dirt rider there, sitting 4th. Cedric Graham, 5th. Robert Mass there, sitting 6th. Diego Leet, 7th. Gary Hamilton, 8th. David Kowalski, sitting 9th. And Krisha from Team at DR2. Again, sitting in 10th there after that first sprint. So those guys should have picked up some sprints, because no doubt this category would have been fast through there. I would never forget Holly's marathon. Yes, Holly, a Yorkshire girl herself, so I know why she's tuned in. No doubt she has a Yorkshire tea. And again, you can see this is just representative of what we see in Yorkshire. Constantly up and down the drags here. Constantly up and down on this course. And it won't be long until we hit the first KOM section. We're 10.5 kilometres into this race. The first KOM, the Yorkshire KOM, is going to come at kilometre 12. And this climb is 1.2 kilometres long. We know the one. It drops down. We take a left turn. We go over that bridge. And then you're straight into that climb. We've raced this many occasions. Thankfully, we didn't do this climb in this direction when we all raced Tour of Chubut Well in the Zwift Racing League. This, I think, is going to be spicy, just like the racing categories. I'm going to see how many times I can get the word spicy into the chat this evening. So, yes, kilometre 12. We're almost there. 1 kilometre to do. We're going to take this right-hand turn. We have a little bit of a descent as we head towards this. Yeah, let me know in the chat which riders are we rooting for. Who is going to top the table in terms of the general classification at the end of the day? Is Ed Laverick going to have enough speed to overturn his current 3rd position on the road and take victory once again in one of the Flamme Rouge racing tours? Ed, no stranger to this. He's raced many tours in the past. If you want to get involved in one of these tours in the past, head over to flammerougeracing.com. There are many tours. I think we generally have 4 tours a year. The next one will be in January. And we are going to share a little bit more information on that tour later on in the show. We might even do a full reveal at the end of the show if you hang around for the next tour. So Bs, we're back to the Bs, and it's all parity. A big group of riders there. Again, representation from England, Wales, US, Germany, Australia, New Zealand. Many, many flags. But we're back with the A's. This is the race lead. And it's our rider, Hamilton, here from TBR, the Big Ring, otherwise known. They've taken that left turn and gone over the bridge. And then they've got this draggy section. We constantly dogleg left on this. We go head over the roundabout. And then you will start to see the banner in the distance. We see Josh Harris there just moving up through the group. Josh representing BL13 currently in the Zwift Grand Prix. Not a permanent rider with BL13, I don't think, but certainly representing the team. Another team which is sponsored by Levelville. I promise I'm not going to mention that too many times this evening. Also racing the Zwift Grand Prix, but it's Hamilton currently pushing the pace here. I have to think Hamilton is simply going just to push the pace to make sure they chase those times. Because if you're looking for fastest through segments on this one, this is probably not the way to do it. And no doubt those riders, led by Josh Harris, will be chasing these two riders down. So we're going to take this right-hand turn here. Just go over the mini roundabout, the infamous mini roundabout. And indeed, it's Josh Harris and Della Ford there, closing that gap. Closely followed by Wilson and Edwards there from the coalition. These two riders pushing the pace, going for points, it has to be said. We'll try and figure out, if we can, where Josh Harris is currently sat. So in terms of the polka dot classification, Josh Harris is currently sat in 12th place. Having said that, this is because in terms of points, he's on 1,100 points, 1,188 points after 7 stages. So no doubt, if he can take some points through this segment on this Yorkshire KOM, and you can see the banner coming up in the distance, there's a good chance of topping the table here and leaping up the table for this final stage. Remember, some of the other races in this category have raced earlier today, and some of the other races, that's the beauty of Flamme Rouge racing. Very flexible in terms of time zones. Frechette here from Optium rode that really, really well, closing the gap at the last minute. Our rider from Canada pushing that power. That looks like that could have been one of the fastest through times also on this stage. So apparently that isn't just the KOM, but of course that is the QOM. You're right, Holly. So we got Holly Bergin there, as I've said, in our YouTube chat. Come and join the conversation. Chat amongst yourselves. I'll try and answer as many questions or list as many comments as I can on tonight's show. Great to have some support there as well. Watching my hubby from Kim Dam Mooch, I want to say, on Facebook chat. Thank you for sharing. This is what we like to see. I was going to say we're going to look at some pain faces, but at the moment that looks quite comfortable for some of our riders. I have to say, that rider there on the top left-hand corner, Atom Racing Team, that is some setup. Just look at the branding on that setup there. Zwift logos, dual screens, that looks like. And that looks a watt bike from the angle I'm sitting here. And then the other three pretty representative of my own Gain Cave. Great to see the effort. Thank you to all the riders in our Discord tonight, willing to hook in and share their video feed to the world, or at least to the Zwifting community. Again, this is the crucial stage. This is the final stage, stage 8 of the Flamme Rouge in Yorkshire. These guys are chasing time. I do apologise. They're chasing points, and those are fastest through points for those climbing sections. And again, we're back with these B riders, and it's Hocking there. Got a 4-second gap currently. pushing a solid 8.1 watts a kilo there, 13 kilometers into the race, into lap 1. Pushing the pace, really going through this fastest through segment. But our A riders are indeed approaching the second time of asking for the Yorkshire Sprint. And there we go, it's Josh Harris once again punching through that group there. A short, punchy 250-metre sprint, that one. But as with all sprints in Yorkshire, that did not come without a little drag before you get to it. And again, a little bit draggy itself. 1% average, but I can tell you it's all in 2 sections, that sprint. You've got a long drag before you get to that sprint, and then you take the right-hand turn, and that start banner of that sprint picks up immediately on your left-hand side, and then you snake your way through to that finish. It's a really tough one. You've got to time it right if you want to maximise the fastest through segment. But it looked like, from what we saw there, Josh Harris had really done it and pushed through. We can see there, Ed Laverick sat comfortably in that pack. Not seeing him too near the front at the moment. We're just looking at some of the numbers from Josh Harris. Sitting at a very comfortable 100 watts there, 155 beats per minute. I expect that heart rate will be coming down after the effort of that sprint. Fantastic to see some of the numbers and the data here. Thank you to the team at ZMS Esports Studio for sharing the data, getting all this set up for this final stage. See a couple of coalition riders also just sat at the back of the group there, taking that draft, taking that recovery. The thing with these two, this next section here, these 3 segments, we went through that Yorkshire Con, we got the Yorkshire Sprint. Very, very quickly, we move on to the second KQOM of the day, which is, of course, the reverse direction. This comes at 17.5, so you don't get much recovery. I do apologise if there is some dead air, but you guys don't want to hear me coughing and spluttering down the mic. As I said, the second KQOM, the reverse Yorkshire Com, is going to come at kilometre 17.5, and this is going to finish at 18.7. So not much recovery between these 3 segments. As you can see, you get that early sprint, and then these 3 come back to back. Bear this in mind, because this is, again, going to be the same for the second lap. Although you've got to think the fastest 3 points are going to be picked up on this first lap, I would guess. It's going to be interesting to see what these riders do for the second lap. I think if I was racing for GC, not that I could ever race GC with these particular riders, but if I was going for GC, I would let these points chasers get it out of the system on this first lap, and then work on tempo, keeping the pace high for that second lap and chasing that time. Remember, it's 1 hour 20 is the time as a minimum we're chasing today if we want to top the table from today's races. So we are on to this climb. This is the Yorkshire KOM reverse, and it's Niall here, Oliver's bicycle. In fact, I know exactly who this is. This is young Niall himself, riding for Backpedal, so a teammate of Ed Laverick. You'll find Niall over on YouTube. Very good climber, Niall. Also ever present on the UK hill climb scene as well. But it is, once again, Josh Harris here. Pushing the pace on this climb, clearly chasing these points. 470 to 490 watts. The heart rate has jumped up from the 150 beats per minute we saw when he was recovering on the descent to 172 beats per minute. 75 RPM. So not one of the slowest we do typically see with some of the top category riders that are much slower RPM. But Josh also very active out on the road. So sitting a good 75 RPM there and opening up quite a gap on this group now. We're only 200 metres away from the top of this climb. You've got to think this is comfortably going to be the fastest through segment here. We're going to take this right-hand turn, and then you'll immediately see the banner. So Josh looks like he's got this in the bag. Through that climb, and then we're going to work onto the descent. And remember, this is where it's all going to be played for on this last lap. So that on the next lap would have been the last segment, and then it's all to play for the finish. As it is, we're still on the first lap. We're expecting an hour and 20 to an hour and 30 minutes of racing today. I expect Josh just to sit up, let these riders come over the top, get back into that draft. We got a small descent here, and then we're on to Oak Beck. Not a categorized climb, but draggy. Certainly a place where you can stretch the legs. So as you can see there, we got Josh Harris. What a great visual here. Josh Harris sat in front with a 15-second gap over these chasers. So Josh continuing with this currently, pushing on. In fact, it was one of the other riders, one of the Canadian riders, either being brought back or was trying to encourage some kind of chase from this group. So Niall, one of our lightweight climbers, as I said, just sat back on the group there. No doubt before we get over onto the draggy section, we're basically just descending down the forward side of the KOM now. And then very shortly we'll get that draggy road that is known as Oakbeck. B Riders looks like it's all together at the moment. Indeed, no riders up the road. It looks like we've got a bunch of maybe 20 riders, mixed categories, habaneros in there. Many teams represented. I can see tactic riders, alpha riders. A few dirt riders in there as well, but it's all parity in this group. They just started to stretch out there, as you can see on the right-hand side. So the B riders also starting to take on that climb and stretching the legs. Look on the left-hand side of the screen there. We're just sat with the A's. Very comfortable, very steady. Well, I'll say comfortable and steady. Taking their time just to pull Josh back now. So I said we are doing this evening's show in partnership with the Virtual Velo Network, which again is a partnership between myself and Chris Fenker. And I can see Chris Fenker is indeed in the chat tonight, so thank you for joining, Chris. Chris and I recently did a podcast. I think it was episode 35 or 34, I forget now, but nonetheless, it was with none other than Martin Carew from the WTRL. So if you do race the Zwift Racing League, or maybe you're interested in racing the Zwift Racing League, then head over to thezoomunicate.com and take a look at the podcast section. You don't just have to listen to the last show. You can listen to the last 10 shows, in fact. Plenty of interesting information there. But again, the last show we did talk to Martin Carew there. All things Zwift. And I think Chris has pointed out, on the next show, we've got none other than Ashley Mormon-Passio. Can you believe that? I'm really looking forward to that show. We're going to be recording that show later next week, so hopefully my voice and my throat has recovered. We're sat with the A's. This is the section, I think, on the next lap, which is really where the riders need to push on if they need to chase that time. All right, so we're sat in here with the A's. Ed Laverick, then. Let's talk about Ed in a bit more detail. He is, of course, chasing the GC overall victory. He will be pushing the pace on this. He obviously raced yesterday's stage. That was another 1 hour 30 stage yesterday. So sorry. Ed himself, a former national hill climb champion, here in the UK. Ed's also a YouTuber, actually. He's also from Wales. I should remember back in the day, he used to ride for GLT Condor, I think it was. I do apologise for a bit of the silence there. Getting some of the lemon and honey down. I finished the Yorkshire tea and we're now on to lemon and honey. As I was saying, Ed Laverick used to ride for Condor GLT back in the day. Really rose to fame when he won that National Hill Climb Championships. He also went for that championship again this year. Sadly finished second to Andrew Feather. But I tell you, if you want some raw viewing on Zwift racing and all things insights into a top UK hill climber, then go and check out Ed's YouTube channel. And here we are, sat with Ed at the moment. This is it, the Pot Bank Climb. This is the place on the second lap where riders are going to push on. In fact, it's the place where riders are clearly keen to push the pace on now. Ed there, sat with around about 450 watts, 160 beats per minute up that climb. And it is Niall, a teammate of Ed Laverick from Backpedal on the front, pushing the pace. Niall, one of our younger riders. One of the UK under-23 hill climb riders, in fact. Very well known in the scene. So again, Niall just backing off the pace a little bit here. Just letting those riders come back up to Niall. Close that gap. And once again, Josh Harris continuing to push the pace. So I think it's quite clear from what we've seen before. Josh is absolutely chasing that polka dot lead jersey. We're going to try and take a look to see where he is in terms of the general classification too. No doubt he will be up there. Indeed. So after 7 stages, Ed Laverick was sitting at 7 hours, 52 minutes. Josh Harris sat at 8 hours, 13 minutes. So again, not huge gaps after this much racing. There we go. So we've got the results from the first 4 segments on lap 1. And you can see Josh Harris topped the table on all 4 segments. The sprint forward, the sprint reverse, the KOM reverse and the KOM forward as well. Carl Frechette also nearly doing all 4. But taking the sprint reverse, the sprint forward, and then the com reverse, taking 3rd on the com forward as well. So some familiar names up there. Ed Laverick, as I said, probably not too interested in these, but he's certainly got himself in the top 10 for the sprint and the com reverse there. But I know Ed absolutely not interested in chasing those points. He is all in for the GC. Look at this, the riders are being stretched. This group now down to about 20 riders already after lap 1. We will be heading back to Harrogate soon to start lap 2. The B race also coming up and over Pot Bank Climb. So again, our lead B rider there pushing 6.5 watts a kilo. And again, you've got 3 different categories in this B race here. Again, this group has reduced down dramatically, I would say. It looks like there's also a split to a second group there. So we just sat on board with Steve, 340 watts. 19 kilometers per hour up this climb. Again, it's Kino from ART just closing that gap. Same category, these riders, so clearly marking each other on this climb. Very shortly, as I said, we will be approaching the halfway point. So on this race, we are 25.2 kilometers. Remember, this race, 55 kilometers in total. So again, we are 9 categories of racing in the men's field, all named after chilies, and 6 categories for the female racers. As we head back across to the A riders. All parity, Ed Laverick just rolling through for the front there. And it's Niall, once again, a teammate just on the front. Looks like Ed is looking to join Niall here. I love it, just rolling through, closely chased by Hamilton from TBR. Niall just easing back, letting his teammate take the work now. Ed Laverick, of course, with that famous orange tick, highlighting the pro status. Miller there from Racing Without Borders, just rolling straight over the top as well. So we see these riders changing quite a bit on the front here, clearly with their mind on that 1 hour 20 minutes and chasing that overall GC. Thank you to everyone in the Facebook chat and the YouTube chat this evening. As I've said, if you want to join in the conversation, please do. What are your thoughts on the racing? Are you going to be joining the next tour? Thank you, Mark, for your podcast. Mark is referring, of course, to the Virtual Velo Network podcast. Yeah, I was talking about Ashley Moorman Passio before. She is our next guest on the podcast. So, of course, we're going to be talking all things road cycling. But also, of course, the Rocker Corber Collective, a very active member and team within the Zwifting community. And Ashley Moorman Passio herself, a former. In fact, she was the first cycling esports world championships back there when we had that course in Watopia for the inaugural UCI World Championships. Good to be back in with one of our riders here. It's Jarrett Atkins here, sat in this group. Looks like we've got a group of 6 riders here rolling through really, really well. That's almost like a chain gang or a pace line that you would see on the road there, really efficiently pushing through to keep that pace high. As we're back with the leaders here. So again, we can see De La Four from Sisu, Boom from Alpha. It looks like Hamilton from TBR is also there still. Ed Laverick, we can see that orange ticker still there also. So if it's your first time in the chat, welcome to the chat. Feel free to join in the conversations. We've got a very active community. If I can't answer the question myself, I think members of the chat will be able to do that for you. Great to see our production team also sharing the chat there from our Facebook community. We are very shortly going to be heading towards the next segment. Remember, we are now on to lap 2. The next segment is the Yorkshire Sprint Reverse. This is going to come at kilometre 29.9. Finishes at 30.3. This is the one, again, it drags up and then you've got that left turn. And you don't see the band until you take that left turn. And it's just over the brow of the hill, this one. It's a really skillful, difficult sprint to get right, this one. A little bit longer in this direction at 400 meters. And here again, just look at that profile at the top of the screen. It's draggy, constantly up and down on this course. We're going to be approaching the banner and then that left turn very, very shortly. We're 900 meters away from the start of this next sprint. This is the final lap. Riders chasing points, riders chasing the GC. These guys have really worked this week. Anyone who completes one of these Flamme Rouge Racing, I doff my proverbial cap to you guys. I can't even say proverbial because I am actually wearing a cap, so I doff my cap to you guys literally this evening. So it's going to be interesting again to see if these riders are still chasing points on this, because again, it is fastest through. So again, we are sat with Gary Hamilton there. We've seen quite a bit of Gary this evening from TBR. That's the Big Ring team. So again, you can see that green marker on the left-hand side of the floor there up in the distance. That's the marker for the start of the sprint. So let's see what happens. Ed not worried about the fastest through, as I've said, but he is willing to lead out this group. Are we going to see any riders punch through this group and chase FTS still? So we're going to take this left-hand turn. And then the road sort of pitches up in front of you. At least that's always the feeling I've had on this sprint. It says it's 0% average gradient. But that looks like a drag to me there. As we drag up, you can see the green banner. A few riders pushing the pace. Niall just coming through over the top of his teammate. Maybe there, I think, just to keep the momentum and the pace high on this little draggy section before we start to head down the other side. But it's only a short respite that we get here. This group, again, has reduced dramatically. What do we think? There's 10, maybe 12 riders in this group. These riders are going to need each other. If they're going to be successful in chasing down that time, so we're 44 minutes into this race today. If they want to chase down this time of 1 hour 20, they're going to need each other. They're going to need to roll through and work. So we see Josh Harris is there. De La Four is still there. We know Hamilton is still there. We know Laverick is still there. Do apologise. So no segments now for a little while. This is sort of the longest gap we have in between those time segments. The next time segment is, of course, going to be back onto that Yorkshire KOM at 39.7 for now. We'll head back down into Harrogate. And we'll go past those pens again. And then we'll start to head out back towards that reverse side of the Pot Bank. We'll go down Pot Bank, first of all, down Oakbeck, and then we'll take on that Yorkshire Com. So again, as I've said, if you want to get involved with the Flamme Rouge Racing Tour, you can do that by heading over to flammerouge.com. Shall we talk about the next tour? Maybe you're thinking about it. You're watching this thinking, how do I get involved? And I can tell you the next tour is just in time for that post-Christmas time when we're all thinking maybe we should not have had so much turkey. And this is it. The Flamme Rouge Racing Tour Watopia courses. This is going to start on January the 2nd and go through to January the 10th. 2 individual time trials on this one. We've got the Coast Crusher and Ocean Cliffside. So we're going to be taking in some of those new roads in Watopia. I'm yet to ride some of those new roads, or yet to ride some of those new roads in Anger in races. I'm hoping also in round 3 of the Zwift Racing League we're going to do that. But this is it, the Tour of Watopia. Head over to Flamme Rouge Racing if you've not done so already. Check this out. Look at those stages. 353 kilometers, 4,500 meters of elevation. So that's virtually flat compared to this tour, because this tour was 6,000 meters of elevation. Anyone who saw my YouTube video of this Flamme Rouge Racing Tour this time round know I made an audio mistake and I said it was 600 meters of elevation. So I hope no one signed up thinking it was 600 meters of elevation, because it's actually 6,000 meters of elevation. But again, you can see the focus on GC, but also with the format, you can see there's plenty of points options here also as well. So 8 stages in total. And you know what? I'm looking at stage 5, accelerate to elevate, Alp time. So that could be the king or queen stage of Tour Watopia. Heading up the Alp. The finish is likely to be there. I think the first Flamme Rouge Racing Tour I did also had a stage where we finished at the top of the Alp as well. And I remember Ed Laverick was in that same race. Thankfully, I was in a completely different category, so I didn't have to chase any wheels up that climb. But also, if I look at stage 8, that looks like it's going to be an interesting, because that is going up to the radio finish. So there's also going to be some major climbing in that final stage of the Tour of Watopia. So head over to Flamme Rouge Racing. That's starting on the 2nd of January. What perfect timing post-New Year to get into shape and take on the challenge of one of these epic rite of passage tours. So here we go. Those are the results from the sprint reverse from lap 2. Hamilton was up there again. It was Niall who rolled through there to take that. Ed Laverick was up there. Cedric Graham, Josh Harris. His day is done. He chased those fastest through segments. Bobby Edwards and David Kowalski also in that top 10 there. So these riders also present in this front group. As we're back on board with one of our younger riders, Caleb, 16-year-old riding for dirt. Hats off, the time commitment to race this series while studying as well. Absolutely fantastic to see the young riders out there. So again, I will highlight again, although we're looking at the A category in terms of the riders on the road, the Flamme Rouge Racing Tour is spread across 9 different categories, all named after Chiles. So basically what that means in reality is that you're racing with riders of very similar ability to yourself. So whereas typically you might see historically with A riders, you'd be anything basically between 4.1 watts a kilo and 6 watts a kilo. When you've got a 9 category system as Flamme Rouge Racing, the riders around you are likely to be much more competitive within your racing power abilities. So again, here is Caleb. We spoke about Caleb, this young 16-year-old, comfortably sat with these riders here, 128 watts. Younger riders tend to have slightly higher heart rates, although it is a little bit more difficult to indicate effort when it comes to heart rate these days. You just see some of the riders going in the opposite direction. So on the right-hand side of the screen there, you can see our B riders. That group has also reduced there. I think we've got about 15 riders in that group on the right-hand side. The left-hand side, look what's happening on this screen here with these A riders. The group is being stretched. With 34 kilometers into this race, we're almost still 5 kilometers away from the next climb, but these riders clearly have this time in mind. It was Miller there from Primo Racing Without Borders who was on the front and pushing the pace, just encouraging the other riders there to come through. So we've got 4 riders just pushing the pace there. Ed Laverick, Miller, Delafort and Hamilton, I think it was. I saw the Scottish flag, so I'm assuming it's Hamilton there pushing the pace on the front. We haven't seen any virtual elbow flicks yet, but that's what these guys will be doing. 2 coalition riders. Kowalski, we've seen his name a few times on those segments. Another rider chasing those points. So just a reminder here, there is a team competition in place as well. Look at the team standings. Evolution are currently topping the table. ART Racing sitting second. Galaxy up there sitting third. The Coalition, a team we just spoke about, sitting fourth overall at the moment. No doubt these two riders will have that team competition in place. That's the beauty of Flamme Rouge Racing. We've got the GC, we've got the team, we've got the Polka Dot, and we've got the sprint. So yes, there is 6,000 meters of elevation throughout this series. But there has been sprint stages, sprint segments. There's been lots of climbs, some long and some punchy. There's something to suit every style of rider. And it is a team competition. So it's about utilizing that team, utilizing a different style of riders on the specific stage. You have not got to go and ride all 8 stages unless, of course, you are chasing that general classification jersey. So just to round out the top 10 of teams, we've got Swart, Apache Brave Racing, 6th, Dirt currently sitting 7th, FRR Legion sitting 8th. I'm going to come back to that in a second. OTR Racing 9th, and FFR Team sat 10th. So again, maybe you race Zwift. Maybe you want to get involved with Flamme Rouge Racing, but you don't have a team. Flamme Rouge Racing can help with that. You will find a section on the Facebook page, but also on the Flamme Rouge website. When you sign up to race one of these grand tours, they can fix you up with a team. So I said, we are going to pull up some results at the end of this race. We should get a good idea who has taken the overall GC. But the full result should be available later this evening over on the Flamme Rouge Racing. Just to give you an idea of the scale of the tour, total riders this week in the Flamme Rouge Racing Tour, 1,655. That's amazing. As I said, this is a rite of passage. These are epic events to be involved with. Again, thank you for joining in the conversation and the chat, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. We see one of our riders just on the right-hand side there, taking an NHL. Absolutely, when you're riding at this intensity on a course like this, which is constantly up and down, punchy course, it is important to reload that glycogen into the system. So we are just 2 kilometers away now for that next climb, which is the Yorkshire KOM, that 1.2 kilometer climb. Christopher Schwenker, teammate and colleague of mine. Awesome broadcast. Really thank you for the comments. Thank you for bearing with me with my UK winter flu as well. I've tried to mute the mic as much as possible. Indeed, I echo Jeremy's comments there. Congrats to all the riders, the racers, and the teams that have taken part in the Flamme Rouge Racing Tour. I can see a lot of chat already about what's going to be happening on the next Flamme Rouge Racing Tour. Talking about some of those stages already. Again, head over to the Facebook pages and get involved in some of that conversation. Go, Martin Cananda. Henrik Tolberg there, over on Facebook. Supporting teammates, friends, partners, all sorts. So if I look at these 2 groups now, in fact, if we look at the B race, that is looking also 10, 12 riders, and also about the same in the A group. But what we're seeing there is the A group riders constantly pushing on, rolling through, pushing the pace. Delafour from Sisu again, pushing that pace. And we're getting ever closer to that next segment.